Pattern rules is probably the most important topic for any test. Now it's also beginning of algebra. So let's see how to write a pattern rule, or rather how to describe numbers and find patterns when they are given to us. So the question is how to find pattern rule. It's an open-ended question. We are not saying pattern for input, pattern for output, or from input to output. We are just given a set of numbers, right? So here we have a table which says IN is for input and OUT is for output, and says when the input is 1, output is 5. When input is 2, output is 8. For input of 3, output is 11, and for 4 it is 14. And we have written some numbers here. So basically the question is, you need to find pattern in this set of numbers. So what we see here is we have a pattern in input side, that is the numbers are increasing by 1. We do have a pattern in output, and what is that? What is 8 minus 5 equals to? So let me see what is 8 minus 5. It is 3, right? So if I do it again, we get the same number. So yes, we do have a pattern here also, and that is they are increasing by 3, right? So we have patterns for input, we have patterns for output. Let's write these patterns down, right? So we have a pattern for input. So input pattern is what? Let's write it down. For input, it seems that the pattern is start at 1, right? That's the starting number. And then what do? Add 1 each time, right? Add 1 each time. So that's the pattern rule for all the inputs. How about outputs? Let's write down that also. Output is start at 5, right? So we start at 5, and then what do? Add 3 each time. So that gives me pattern for input and output. Now the question is, how is output related with input? I mean, how do you get output from input? That means when I enter 1, I get 5, and when I enter 2, I get 8. What is that relation? This is what we are trying to say when we say pattern rules. Do you understand? So rule number 1 for inputs, rule number 2 for outputs, and rule number 3, which is kind of very critical to find relation between input and output. How are they related? Now that is kind of very critical to figure out. How do we do that? This is what I'm going to explain you now. Let's look at it once again. Let's see how output changes for every change in input. So when input changes by 1, by how much output is changing? Output is changing by 8 minus 5, which is 3, right? So let's say 8 minus 5 is 3. Then 11 minus 8 is again 3. And then again 3, right? So it changes by 3 times. 3, each time 3. So what we find here is that for every increase in input, output increases by 3. So that means 3 plays a critical role in finding the relation. Now let's look back as how to get 5 from 1. We know for every input, output increases by 3. So if I multiply 1 by 3, what do I get? I get 3, but not 5. How will I get 5? So I do times 3 plus 2, then I get 5. That makes sense. Let me try this with 2. What is 2 times 3? 2 times 3 is 6. And 6 plus 2? 8. It works. 3. 3 times 3 is 9. And 9 plus 2? 11. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 2? 14. That works. Let me try with 5. So what is 5 times 3 equals to? 5 times 3 is 15, and when I add 2, what do I get? I get 17. Well, is that the right answer? How to check that? Let's check it. We are going up by 3. What is 14 plus 3 equals to? 14 plus 3 is also 17. So it works. So we found a rule, and the rule is output is equal to what? Now we can write down. We can write down output is equals to input times 3 plus 2. That is the rule which we figured out. Do you see that? Now Is that the right rule? We can check with any number. Let's check with 3 again. 3 times 3 is 9, 9 plus 2, 11. It works. It works for all these numbers. Do you see that? How does this rule help you? It helps you to find the output for bigger numbers. For example, 20. Now, one way to get what is the output for 20 is you can continue this series, right? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. Accordingly, keep on adding 3, right? And then figure out what is output for 20. The other way is apply the rule. Output is input times 3 plus 2. So let's do that. Input is 20. We do 20 times 3 is what? 60, right? 60. And let's add 2 to it. 62. So it should be 62. So that is the output for input of 20 for us. Okay. So right. Well, that is my output for 20. Correct? So that is how we get. Now let's have a second look into the same equation. We call this kind of an equation, right? We are relating input and output, and in between we write equal to. So whenever we write equal to, we call it an equation. And we also call it algebraic equation, since inputs could be any number, not just 1, 2, or 3, any number. And therefore, we also call it algebraic equation. So that is kind of introduction for you to algebraic equations or algebra, okay? So that's the part of algebra we'll work on. So we'll have a few more examples like this and then see how algebra helps to solve problems. Thank you.